Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. What you are about to hear sounds like a headline pulled straight from a high-budget political thriller, but the reality behind it is far more complex, more dangerous, and far more revealing about how modern warfare actually works. At exactly 2:14 p.m. local time, reports began circulating that Iran had intercepted and detained 8 U.S. Marines during what Tehran described as a security incident in a highly sensitive zone. 19 minutes later, the regional balance of power shifted dramatically. 11 Iranian military bases were reportedly neutralized in a coordinated, precision-driven response that stunned observers across the world. This is not just a story about missiles, bases, or captured soldiers. This is a story about escalation, deterrence, intelligence warfare, and the razor-thin line separating peace from all-out conflict in the Middle East. To understand what really happened, why it happened so fast, and what it means for the future, we need to break this down step by step. At the heart of this incident lies a region that has been tense for decades. The United States and Iran have never formally been at war, yet they have existed in a state of constant confrontation, shadow conflict, and strategic hostility. From economic sanctions to cyber warfare, from proxy battles to covert operations, both sides have learned how to hurt each other without officially pulling the trigger. But what happened at 2:14 p.m. was different. It crossed a threshold. According to early accounts, the 8 U.S. Marines were operating as part of a routine security and advisory mission. Whether this involved maritime patrols, logistics support, or classified intelligence coordination remains disputed. Iranian authorities claimed the Marines entered restricted territory and posed a threat to national security. The United States denied this, insisting the personnel were operating legally under international norms. What matters most is not just who is right, but how fast the situation escalated. Within minutes of the interception, communication channels lit up. Satellite phones, encrypted military networks, and emergency diplomatic lines were activated simultaneously. The capture of even a single U.S. service member is considered a red line event by Washington. 8 Marines being detained was interpreted not as a mistake, but as a deliberate provocation. For Iran, the decision to intercept and detain foreign military personnel was likely calculated. Tehran has historically used such incidents as leverage, signaling strength to domestic audiences while testing the limits of U.S. restraint. The assumption may have been that Washington would protest, negotiate, and eventually de-escalate, as it has done in the past. This time, that assumption proved dangerously wrong. 19 minutes is an extraordinarily short window in military terms. In that span of time, the United States reportedly executed a pre-authorized contingency response. These plans are not drawn up overnight. They exist precisely for moments like this, when decision makers have seconds, not hours, to act. The reported strikes on 11 Iranian military bases were not random acts of retaliation. They were precise, targeted, and designed to send a message without triggering immediate full-scale war. Each base reportedly served a specific function within Iran's military infrastructure. Some were linked to missile storage and launch capabilities. Others were associated with drone operations, radar installations, or command and control centers used by the Revolutionary Guard. The speed of the response suggests that these targets had been mapped, monitored, and rehearsed long before the incident occurred. This is a hallmark of modern military doctrine. Preparation replaces improvisation. By the time the Marines were intercepted, the response was already waiting for a trigger. From Tehran's perspective, The sudden loss of 11 military installations in under half an hour was a shock. Iranian air defense systems were reportedly overwhelmed by a combination of electronic warfare, cyber interference, and standoff precision strikes. Some bases were disabled rather than destroyed, rendering them unusable without causing mass casualties. This distinction matters because it reveals the intent behind the operation. The goal was not annihilation. The goal was dominance. By striking quickly and decisively, the United States demonstrated that it could impose severe costs almost instantly. This is deterrence in its purest form, the ability to respond faster than your opponent can adapt. The message was clear. Any attempt to use American personnel as bargaining chips would come at an unacceptable price. Meanwhile, global reactions poured in. Allies of the United States expressed concern, but stopped short of condemnation. Privately, many acknowledged that the response was within the bounds of self-defense. Rival powers called for restraint, warning that the situation could spiral out of control. International markets reacted immediately, with energy prices spiking amid fears of wider conflict in the Gulf. Inside Iran, the narrative became complicated. State media initially portrayed the interception of the Marines as a victory, a demonstration of sovereignty and strength. But as reports of damaged bases and disrupted military operations emerged, the tone shifted. Questions began to surface. How could such critical installations be hit so quickly? How deep did foreign intelligence penetration really go? This is where the incident becomes more than a military exchange. It becomes an intelligence failure. For 11 bases to be struck in such a short time, their locations, functions, and vulnerabilities had to be known in advance. This implies long-term surveillance, human intelligence networks, and cyber infiltration. It suggests that Iran's internal security apparatus may be far more compromised than publicly admitted. At the same time, the United States faced its own challenges. The safety of the 8 Marines became the immediate priority. Military action carries risks, especially when personnel are in enemy custody. Every strike increases the danger of retaliation against detainees. The fact that the operation went ahead anyway underscores how seriously Washington viewed the situation. Negotiations reportedly began almost as soon as the strikes concluded. Back-channel diplomacy, mediated by regional actors, sought to prevent further escalation. Iran signaled that the Marines were being treated according to international standards. The United States made it clear that any harm to them would result in consequences far beyond what had already occurred. This delicate standoff highlights the paradox of modern conflict. Military power is used not to win wars outright, but to shape negotiations. Violence becomes a language, spoken briefly and sharply, to redefine the terms of engagement. The broader implications are significant. First, this incident reinforces the reality that the Middle East remains one of the most volatile regions on Earth. A single encounter can trigger actions with global consequences. Second, it demonstrates how quickly events can unfold in the age of real-time intelligence and rapid strike capabilities. There is little room for hesitation, and even less room for miscalculation. Third, it sends a warning to all actors in the region, not just Iran. The interception of foreign military personnel is no longer a low-risk gambit. The cost-benefit equation has changed. What once led to negotiations may now lead to immediate and painful consequences. For the United States, the operation reasserted credibility at a time when many questioned its willingness to act decisively. For Iran, it exposed vulnerabilities that will likely drive changes in military posture air defense investments, and counterintelligence efforts. Yet despite the dramatic nature of the event, both sides appeared to step back from the brink. No further strikes were reported in the immediate aftermath. Diplomatic channels remained open. This suggests that for all the fire and fury, there was still a shared interest in avoiding a wider war. But make no mistake, the precedent has been set. Future encounters will be judged against this moment. Commanders on both sides will remember how fast things escalated, how little warning there was, and how high the stakes became in under 20 minutes. The margin for error has narrowed. In the end, the story of 2:14 p.m. is not just about 8 Marines or 11 bases. It is about a world where power is measured in seconds, where decisions are executed before headlines are written, and where the difference between crisis and catastrophe depends on choices made in silence far from public view. As tensions continue to simmer, one question remains unanswered. Was this incident a one-time shock designed to restore deterrence? Or was it a glimpse into a future where flashpoints ignite faster than diplomacy can contain them? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain. The events of that afternoon will be studied in military academies, debated in political circles, and remembered as a moment when the balance of power shifted, not through prolonged war, but through 19 minutes of calculated force. If you found this analysis insightful, stay tuned, because we will continue to break down the most critical global events, separating noise from reality, and helping you understand what really happens behind the headlines.